Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about the latest Scott Derrickson film, the guy who's known for Doctor Strange and Sinister and some other horror films. He also did a film in 2022 called The Black Phone, and today I'm reviewing its sequel that he also happened to direct and came back for, as well as Joe Hill, who wrote the original story, who happens to be the son of Stephen King. He wrote that original Black Phone story, which Scott Derrickson directed the first time around, and now Scott Derrickson is doing a follow-up story called The Black Phone 2. So in this movie, you guys, we follow the son and daughter of this family that we followed in the first Black Phone movie, and they're kind of still getting over all the events that of the grabber of the son being kidnapped and the grabber being murdered and the neighborhood still kind of getting over everything from that. But while all that is going on, the both of them are still having nightmares at night. One of them in particular is having nightmares about a winter campsite that happens to be in the same state that they live in. And so it eventually just gets to the point where the daughter of the family convinces her older brother, let's just go to the campsite, let's see what's there. If there's really nothing there, we'll just come home and just kind of deal with it. But they get hired as basically these counselors in training, and they stay at this campsite for a little while because I guess it's only open during the winter for some reason. And so while they're there, they find out that the grabber from the first Black Phone movie, the villain of the movie, um, basically has connections to the campsite. He once worked there. There's a lot of murders that took place that he's connected to there. And so over the course of this film, the longer they stay at this campsite, the more they realize that the grabber is long from dead. There's something that he was able to do to basically, come back to life and all this other stuff. And over the course of this movie, they find out there's a lot more in store than them for the grabber himself than they initially realized upon going to this campsite. But overall, guys, I enjoyed The Black Phone too. I thought it was a really good movie, a really good sequel. I will say right off the bat, I don't think it's better than the first Black Phone movie. I think that first film is a lot better than this one is. But this still is a great follow up. It's a great continuation to that first story. There's a lot of things to admire about it. I think there's good direction involved. I think they made the wise choice of kind of going a really different direction over that first Black Phone movie. It's not just another kid being kidnapped. The phone leads, people in the dead that are giving advice and stuff like that. There really is a lot more to it this time around. So there's a lot of things to admire about the film, even though it doesn't quite exceed the value of that first Black Phone movie. But there's tons of things to admire about it, so I want to go over some positives and negatives as to why I really enjoyed the movie. But while there's also some things about it that aren't quite as good as that first film. So for my positives of this movie, first and foremost, this is a great continuation of that first Black Phone story. We do follow a lot of those characters from the first movie. There's even another positive regarding one of these returning characters I thought was even better this time around. But we do get a great continuation. We get a lot of time of both the son and the daughter of this family. I think Mason Thames from How to Train Your Dragon plays the son here. A great continuation. It's pretty much everything you'd want from that first Black Phone movie in its continued form. And we were absolutely thrown back into that universe again. And I thought it was a great way to continue the overall story of the Black Phone. We also briefly get to go back kind of to the grabber's house from that first movie. We kind of get to see how it's kind of a victim of vandalizing now. Like there's a lot of graffiti there, a lot of broken windows. It's very easy to just kind of enter one of the doors of this house and kind of see what remains of the grabber's home. Um, so the way they kind of depicted that I thought was pretty interesting. Like, most of the time, when there's a big crime scene like that, they just kind of hold it off with, yellow tape and they tell you not to cross, any trespassers will get ticketed and stuff like that. So I do like how the grabber's home is more so just like a victim of graffiti, a victim of people kind of glad that he's gone now and stuff like that. So the way that they depicted his house, I thought was pretty clever this time around. I also like how the film does build upon the story lore of the first movie. It really does continue the Mason Thames character, kind of the stuff that he was dealing with the first time around, and some kind of anxiety and some panic attacks that he has since gotten since the first movie, and kind of how the trauma he faced with the grabber still kind of haunts him to this day. He's kind of picking up on drugs and stuff like that. And then with the daughter, obviously she's having her problems, and with her kind of being more of a side character in the first movie, she's obviously getting a lot of nightmares and has this ability to um, basically just have more than just dreams. It is more like things that are going on in the real world, things that are connecting in the real world that she's able to kind of do. And there's also kind of an arc with the father, with him struggling with alcoholism in that first movie, and how he's moving forward but still kind of grieving about certain things, and how he wants the best for his children, is more open to his children doing more things. So there's a lot of stuff with that going on. So overall, it just builds upon the overall lore of the story better. We also find a little bit more about the mom this time around, because I know she has brought up that she's passed away in the first movie, and we get a little bit more detail as to why that was. We also even get a little bit more about the grabber and his backstory and some things that he was doing before he kind of officially became the grabber and stuff like that. So it builds upon the story lore in really effective ways. So for those who want more explaining and more details about the overall Black Phone universe, I think this film does a great job of doing that. I also thought the winter camp setting was very effective here. Like I said, they get hired as counselors in training for the son and the daughter of the family, and it's an overall very effective place to shoot a horror film at. It's very creepy, like the bunk beds and what's hiding in certain rooms, and how certain like ovens and stuff like that are depicted in this campsite, specifically at night when they're dreaming and having nightmares. Just an overall very creepy setting to have a horror film based in. You can definitely tell they probably were inspired a little bit like by Friday the 13th and stuff like that. Um, so overall, very effective setting here, and I thought it worked very well in the film's favor as well. I also thought the dream world elements were very effective here. It's not quite as good as the way the Nightmare on Elm Street films depicted the dream world, but I do like how they do kind of make the real world and the dream world kind of one in the same place. But once you're in the dream world, there's more fantastical things that are kind of available to you, if that makes any sense. So I do like how it's overall depicted. It is a little bit like Nightmare on Elm Street. You can kind of tell they stole a little bit from that, but for the most part, the elements here are pretty effective for the overall dream world that they're depicting here. I also do like how this film has more of a focus on the sister character this time around. We do follow her mostly over the Mason Thames character, even though Mason Thames gets a lot to do in the movie. But there is more of a focus on her ability to kind of have these unique dreams where she kind of can have a voice in something, is played off of a little bit more in this film than it was in the first one. So I think a focus on her was pretty clever. I like how it kind of allows for characters from the first film that had a big role to still have a lot to do in the movie, while also kind of giving characters that didn't have a lot to do in that first movie more chance to shine. I think the father character is another good example of this too. So I thought the focus on the sister, kind of having that shift in focus, I thought was very effective here too. And overall too, like I mentioned earlier, I do think the father character is an improvement over the first movie. And it's always a good thing to kind of make a character more likable, because in that first movie, he really was a drunk and an abuser and really not a likable character. Even though he has a little bit more of a redemptive arc by the end of that movie. This time around, I do like how they do try to keep him more of a likable character from beginning to end. And he still has a little bit of an arc. He still has some stuff from his past that he's still dealing with, still traumatized about. But he's not a drunk anymore. He got help. He realized what his problems were. So I do like how we're seeing more. I wouldn't say he's officially like on a comic relief at this point, but I do like how he has a more likable presence to him. So I thought that aspect of the story and that aspect of the character I thought was more effective this time around. But for my negatives of Black Phone 2, why it doesn't quite hold up to that first movie, unfortunately some of the scares are a little bit of a long wait here. It really is kind of, we'll get a lot of story, then we'll have a scare, then we'll have a lot of story, then we'll have a lot of story, then this character goes through that, and then that character goes through that. Then we have a scare again, and then we have more story, and then more story, and then more story. So I feel like it is kind of a long wait between the scares. So it is one of those things where I kind of wish that the trailers didn't give as much away as they did, because I do feel like some of those scares were kind of some of the better scares, if that makes any sense. So it is kind of a long wait for those. So if you want a film where it's just like a scare a minute, a scare a minute, a scare a minute, the grabber a minute, the grabber a minute, a grabber a minute, I think it's really not that kind of movie. I really do think it's kind of one of those films where it likes to build up to something big. It is one of those kind of stories, because the third act alone is pretty busy. Like, it has a lot going on in the third act. So kind of a long wait for the scares. So I wish that aspect of the writing of the script could have been better. I also didn't like how this film really felt like a clear ripoff of both Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, and even a little bit of The Shining with the whole winter thing. It really felt like kind of a ripoff of other movies. The dream world was clearly ripped off of Nightmare on Elm Street. The summer camp setting during the winter was clearly ripped off during Friday the 13th. And the whole being stuck in the winter setting is clearly inspired by The Shining. So it's one of those things where it's kind of difficult for this film to mask that it took from other things and took from other films. So I kind of wish it wasn't just so obvious with what it's ripping off of. Like, it's fine if you want to have a winter setting, it's fine if you want to have a campsite, and it's fine if you want to have Dreamworld stuff, but do something different than those things you're ripping off of. Like, if it feels directly from Nightmare on Elm Street, it feels directly from Friday the 13th, and it feels directly from The Shining, you're going to have a film that feels like it's almost borrowing too much. And I feel like that kind of hurts this film's identity in a sense, because I like the way that first Black Phone was handled. And it's kind of too bad that Black Phone 2 had a hard time finding its own identity. Another negative I had about the movies, I thought more time could have been spent with the overall regular neighborhood that these two kids lived in, the Mason Thames character and his sister, because it really did feel like we were continuing that overall Black Phone story from the first one. I'm not saying the whole film had to be there, but it does kind of feel like, first 10 minutes are there, and then the rest of the movie we're all entirely in that winter summer camp thing. So um, I thought that aspect of the story was a little disappointing. Would have liked to have seen more scenes that happened in their overall neighborhood before completely making that transition over into that campsite. And overall, too, I thought by the end of the movie, I just needed more time with the grabber. I really feel like, yes, he's in it. Yes, he has a big presence when he shows up, but I feel like it's a long wait to get to all the grabber stuff. He really is kind of brought up more in conversation more than anything else throughout the movie. And there's obviously a lot of mystery that they're trying to unravel over the film and stuff too, but I needed more time with the grabber. You have Ethan Hawke in your movie. Utilize Mr. Hawke a little bit more than I think that they ended up doing. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Black Phone 2 an 8.5 out of 10. I think it is a really good sequel. I think it's a great continuation of that first Black Phone movie. A couple negatives along the way. It is a great movie, though. I think if you're into horror films and if you really like that first Black Phone film, I think you're going to really like this one, too. Just go in knowing that it's not as good as that first movie. I think there is some things about it that hold it back from being as good as the first one, but there is things about it that are very, very well done. So I do recommend seeing it, so be sure to see The Black Phone 2 if you're into those kind of films, and it is an 8.5 out of 10 for me. I recommend it.